and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's wonderful to see you all here, even if it's virtually, as part of our celebration. We ask that you please keep your microphones muted during today's event unless you are being asked to speak. So as mentioned, my name is Khaled Hassanin. I'm a professor of information systems and the Associate Dean Graduate Studies and Research at DeGroote. We know this year did not go as planned, but we are so proud of how resilient you have all been during this time and want to celebrate your successes here with you today. Accounting is one of the cornerstones of business education. It takes a great deal of discipline to succeed in the field. Measuring results while holding ourselves accountable is increasingly important in our everyday business in our ever-evolving world. To start off our celebration, we have a guest speaker and distinguished alumna, Susan Glass. To introduce Susan here is Eric Benson Bilkvist, Assistant Professor Accounting and Financial Management Services at DeGroote. I'll now turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Khaled. I'm proud to introduce Susan Glass, a former MBA student at McMaster University and lecturer at McMaster University as well, who has just recently semi-retired, not fully retired, but semi-retired from her position at KPMG as managing partner. She is a former national leader of KPMG's Valuation and Litigation Services and a former chair and board of the KPMG in Canada with over, I have here 40 years of experience, but if you look at it, I would say it's more like 10 years of experience versus 40. She specializes in business valuations. And most importantly, I want to point out that she was in various other courts, but the most important courts, of course, is, from my standpoint, the Tax Court of Canada. So she has been an expert witness at the Tax Court of Canada, as well as various other courts of justice in Canada. She's been responsible for the valuations of public and private companies and is lead partner responsible for providing solvency opinion back a few years ago when Bell Canada Enterprises was going to be taken private, and based on her work at KPMG, BCE was not taken private and still now continue to be a public company based on solvency tests. So without any further ado, Susan, take it over.
Thank you very much, Eric. And so a couple of things by way of introduction. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. It's an absolute honor and delight. And congratulations to all of the graduates. This is an absolutely amazing accomplishment, particularly in these very unusual, difficult times. So I was asked to speak today to just highlight some of my career milestones. Eric has mentioned a few. When I first graduated, I joined McMaster and taught accounting for about 3 years at McMaster. I subsequently joined KPMG and have been with them ever since, formally retired last year, but I still work kind of in a part-time capacity. I'd just like to point out the accounting degree that you have and your training can take you many places. It certainly has taken me many places that I would not have expected. I began in audit, I moved ultimately to advisory, and I ended up in the valuation practice, valuing businesses, and had some fascinating assignments. Probably one of the most interesting and certainly the most widely reported was the BCE transaction that Eric just mentioned. It was the largest transaction in history at the time. And when I say in history, I don't just mean in Canada, I mean globally. It was over $50 billion transaction. BCE was to be taken over by Ontario Teachers and a number of other private equity firms in a very highly levered transaction. And because of the high leverage, it required a solvency opinion. Would the BCE still be solvent after taking on the additional debt? Unfortunately, the transaction closing date arose in the midst of the recession, and we concluded we were unable to provide a favorable opinion. So we provided a negative opinion, which resulted in the deal being terminated and a very swift multi-billion-dollar decline in the value of BCE shares. So it was very high stress, very high pressure, but that's the sort of thing I find interesting. I've done a number of other solvency and fairness opinions, and they've always been very interesting. But perhaps one of my favorite areas of practice has been litigation, shareholder disputes, take private transaction, income tax disputes, financing matters, antitrust violations, the list goes on. Some of my clients have included companies such as the Toronto Blue Jays, DeFasco, Algoma, the Government of Canada, McDonald's, Rogers, TransAlta, Sobeys, so a lot of the big names. It's, I love litigation. It means you have to go to court and testify, but I don't know, I guess I just love a good fight. It's just, I find it fascinating, and every case is different, and it keeps things interesting. Another thing that has always, that I did not expect, but it happened, and it was very interesting, was a lot of travel, be it for client matters in companies based outside of Canada and or throughout Canada, and or speaking engagements. So as a result, I've seen most of Canada, I've seen a lot of the US, London, Rome, what I view as to be one of the most beautiful countries in the world, a country in Central Europe called Slovenia. I've been to Asia, Beijing, Hong Kong, the Caribbean, and so forth. So, and as Eric mentioned, I've also held a number of leadership roles as the national leader of valuations across the country and as chair of the board of KPMG. So I think, you know, as you embark in your graduation, there are a significant number of career tracks available to you, be it audit, tax, and advisory in the professional world and or the corporate world, whether it be with the pension funds, private equity funds, investment banking, the financial sector, and or corporations. Many of the people that I taught and or graduated with years ago are now CFOs and CEOs of various corporations. So when you do get out into the world, and hopefully at a point when you're actually able to meet people rather than doing everything via phone, you know, do look around, speak to people, ask questions, attend career fairs, and really find the one thing that you just love. Because I absolutely love valuation, and I think to have a career that you can say that about is to be in the best possible position. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions people might have.
Thank you, Susan. I think Olivia is moderating. Folks, if you have any questions, just type it into the chat box, and I think Olivia will project that question onto the screen, and then Susan would be glad to answer that. So let's just...
I'm just going to mention one question, and that is the reason why I'm still working today is because of the negative opinion Susan gave to BCE, and my investment plummeted in value, and hence I'm still working today. Thank you very much, Susan.
That's a good one, Eric.
Yeah, that was a very, you could just imagine how I felt when I had to announce that to a room full of 20 people, most of whom were BCE folks, senior management, who as a result were going to lose personally stock options worth anywhere from $5 to $30 million. So it was quite the stressful announcement, let me tell you.
Okay, so with that, let me ask, I think that's a good kind of question that Eric asked. And in your travels, I never realized you had become, you know, very quietly, you've been globetrotting all this while. So as some of our students also are globetrotters. In fact, there's one student who is probably across many time zones, and you can probably see she looks a little sleepy because she is out somewhere in Asia. So the point is, if these people were to think about where to work, which financial capital, where do you think it would be a very good boost for people to show up, or should they all be in the GTA?
I don't necessarily say all in the GTA, although if you are, I would think, in my view, and I'm not Canadian originally, but I think Canada is the best place to live, to raise a family. The school system's amazing. You know, we don't have Trump. So we have all sorts of things working in our favor, right? But in terms of, but I love to go elsewhere and see how people do things and see business. I think if you're working in the GTA, particularly for one of the larger firms, you will have likely more opportunities to do that. Although I think, you know, you'll also have opportunities in some of the other major centers, be it Montreal or Vancouver. Calgary tends to be very more oil and gas focused, and so you might be back and forth between Calgary and Texas, but probably not much more. The smaller centers, I mean, they have their own benefits because you're kind of jack of all trades, and so you see a lot, but you probably won't see as much from a global perspective in the smaller centers.
Right. Just one last question, then we can probably move on to the other part of our session today with the awards and so on. Just one quick question. I know there's been a lot, and I think Eric has been first right off the bat to say a few things, but these days when people often talk about, you know, originally people said tax was like a compliance function, and you said you found the new love in valuations and so on. So what do you think? Is tax still a compliance function, or is it a profit driver from a valuation standpoint, or even litigations?
I would not, certainly at KPMG, and I would think any of the other big four, I would not view it as a compliance function. Most of our senior tax partners are dealing in strategic matters. You know, how should we, so we have a lot of international audit clients. How should we organize this company in order to minimize tax globally? And then, of course, there are now all sorts of regulations in the tax area that is trying to prevent companies from minimizing tax globally. So, you know, how do we get around those sorts of rules? So it's a very strategic practice, I think, tax. And of course, you know, tax is not just one topic. There's income tax, there's Canadian tax, there's, you know, we'll have US tax experts, Asian tax experts, all working in Canada, because a lot of our companies are at litigation. There's, you know, sales tax issues, there's property. So there's all sorts of other types of tax, not just income tax.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. I'm sure, you know, our students and our basically, you know, junior professionals, the up and coming, they probably would have benefited a lot from your insight into some of these questions. And I'm sure we'll see some of their names in the papers even as early as next year, if so many of them makes it to the honor roll, and even later on in the profession as well. So without further delay, I'll probably pass it over to Khalid, Dr. Hassanin at this point to kind of hand out the awards, and then I'll come right back, and then we'll have a few accounting trivia questions, and then that's how we're going to proceed further. So Khalid, it's all yours, please. Yeah. No, you need to unmute yourself. This is one of the Zoom situation, right? No, we still can't hear you, Khalid. Yeah. Now you're.
So, thank you again, Khalid, and for alerting me to the mute thing. Congratulations to all of you again, and we are pleased to be highlighting now some of our exceptional graduates with awards. So I will say them in order with the award name followed by the name of the recipients. So highest overall GPA, Betty Lynn. Highest overall GPA, Reed Murray. Highest grades in 601, 602, and 603, Eric Covello. And highest 701, 702, 703, Anderson Hunter. And entrance award goes to Musa Jekna. And I should say that congratulations, Musa, also for being the valedictorian in the commerce program for this year's. So congratulations on those two things. So please help me in congratulating all the recipients. Okay, with that, I turn it over to Khalid.
Okay, thank you, Khalid. Okay, so at this point, I think just to introduce certain things, as I said, as it says on the screen, a little bit of trivia, just like one of the Jeopardy type. We have about 5 questions, and as the questions are going to come up, and I'm going to speak as well, but it'll show up in the chat box. You can pretty much answer in the chat box, and whoever gets to answer first basically will be mailed some prizes and so on and so forth, right? So these were carefully crafted questions. Again, these are not really related to any of the material, but rather the more humanistic some things that you might use in a cocktail networking type sessions, which is quasi, that's really what we are in today's graduation ceremony. So here it goes, okay? The first question is, when was the first CPA exam administered, before or after 1900? Okay, so when was the first, yeah, so, and you can also see the question on the screen. And I'll give you, I don't have a timer, but I'm just looking at the clock. I'll give you about a minute, okay? So, and then we call it quits, okay? So there are 2 parts, these are before 1900 or after 1900. And as I said, there's a bonus points for getting the exact year, right? So let me see in the chat box, any responses? Okay. Okay. Oh, so everybody's hitting. Okay, so we got many responses, and as I said, in these cases, the first one to respond will probably get the prizes, which will be mailed out. I think Olivia will send out towards the very end, and I'll also make a reference to those prizes. Okay, and okay, so I think that's pretty much the answer to that question. Basically, was before, and the exact year is 1896. The second question.
And no, I was not the one writing that exam.
Well, I mean well, we can see that, right? Just by looking at you, Eric, you're still around, right? Because if you were, then you would have been part of the Spanish flu, and then you would have been a big expert on the talk shows and so on.
Exactly.
How the pandemic was handled in 19 and so on. Anyway, so without further delay, let's go on to question number 2. The ballots for this award show have been counted and controlled by the CPAs every year since 1935. What award show was that? Oh, there, right off the bat, Mackenzie has answered it. The answer is, of course, Oscars, right? So let me then move on and talk about question number 3. So congratulations, Mackenzie. Okay, question number 3. Name one of the famous rock musicians who practiced accounting before their careers took off. So you can see there are a lot of nice, charismatic fellows in the accounting profession. And maybe I can just give you a hint as well. The lead singers for the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. So they really had their start in accounting. So maybe one of you might be a rock star, maybe a few days from now or a few years from now. Okay. So that's right. So we already have a couple of responses. Lucas says Robert Plant. Yes, that's one of them, right? And then there's one more, if somebody wants to get a bonus. Okay, the question again was 1, so I think that's fine. The other person was, of course, Mick Jagger. Okay, so then let me move on to question number 4. So this is a very interesting question. I could not have thought about it, but thanks, Olivia, for having this question. What is the only proper noun in the English dictionary to contain 3 sets of double letters back to back? Okay, once again, the only proper noun in the English dictionary to contain 3 sets of double letters back to back. And this can be both American English, Canadian English, and, basically the Queen's English, the English, and so on. Okay. Very good. Okay, so again, Lucas gets that. Okay, so that's right, bookkeeper or bookkeeping. That's we can talk about that. Okay. Okay, so then move on to question number 5. What bubbly confection did Walter Demir, an accountant, invent in 1928? So you can see accountants, apart from keeping books, they were also inventors, right? Yeah. So once again, what confection did Walter Demir, an accountant, invent in 1928? And Justin said, okay, bubble gum. Very true. Okay, very bubbly stuff. And finally, and this is something that if you had read, and I had posted an article on, and you know, on your Avenue, some of you might have did when we were doing the last about when we did stocks and bonds and so all that kind of stuff, doing capital structure. What are Burrito bonds? And then I will briefly turn it over to Eric to say a few things. Burrito bonds. What are Burrito bonds? In fact, there was an article, guys, on Avenue called Burrito. That's right. So Shubhika, right, the fixed income is something that's true. It was a fixed income instrument, but basically the idea is along with the fixed income on a regular basis, you are also entitled to eat burritos as well in a franchise. This was something coming out of London, England. So with that, I think since I had the magic word burritos, Eric, you have a few words to say on burritos and anything? Unmute yourself, please, Eric.
I am disappointed that this is not a face-to-face celebration, because there should be a special burrito award to one of our students who, in the middle of the lecture, I guess got a little bit hungry and decided to order burritos, large fries, and a Coke. And of course, didn't realize that his mute button was off, and therefore the whole class got to listen to his ordering of his burritos, his large Coke, and his fries. And the negative of the whole thing is that he didn't even share his burritos when he ordered his burritos during the lecture. So the award, even though we have nothing, will go to Mackenzie Brown for his beautiful ordering during DPA 603. So that was his take on the burrito bonds, I think.
That's a very good memory, and I'm sure, I mean, you know, this is being recorded, so, you know, Mackenzie, you can have it for the ages. You can tell, you know, even your posterity about what you did in the first, you know, pandemic program and so on and so forth, right? So without further delay at this point, since Eric, while you talk about burritos, you want to say a few last words to the class we just had this summer, Eric, and then we can go through the other instructors as well.
Well, you know, for a lot of you, you've listened to me now for 41 lectures times 3 hours of lectures. So that's like 120 hours. So I realize that I'm sure you're getting sick and tired of listening to me. And the other thing that scares me is when I look down, I also taught Erica, Betty, and Nathan. So they're probably sick and tired of listening to me as well. So anyways, what I do want to say is I want to wish you obviously all the best in your future endeavors. And as Susan mentioned, I think that accounting does open up a huge amount of doors, whether you stay in public practice or decide to leave public practice after you get your CPA and go out into industry. It does open up an amazing number of doors, and it's a great profession to be in. So I wish you all the best, and good luck in your future.
Thank you, Eric, at this point. Yeah, Yvonne, you want to say a few closing thoughts and advice for our great students? Yeah.
Sure, I will be the last, but let's move on to Erica Rasmussen.
Okay, Erica, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I just want to say congratulations again, everyone. You've made it through the summer. You're going to really appreciate this program, especially when you start working and then you don't have to do the modules. So congratulations and all the best.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Then Nathan, you want to go ahead, please? Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Khaled. Yeah, I just want to wish everyone a
Vancouver now first, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can give you guys a little view of my office view. It's quite nice out here. If anyone's interested in coming out to Vancouver, let me know. I'd be happy to take you for lunch once this pandemic's over. But yeah, as Eric mentioned, like there is a lot of opportunity once you get your CPA to go elsewhere. when Cal had mentioned the guitarists that were accountants, it reminded me of a joke or a comic I had seen in the past. I'll share it in the chat after. I just found it. But yeah, the CPA gives you lots of opportunities to do things outside of accounting. And even if you want to do something like entrepreneurial, like it gives you a really good backbone to be able to analyze things and opportunities. Yeah, and there's more than just audit. There's tax, as Eric has told you for years. I'm in the US tax side, and there's lots of demand for that. So if you're ever interested in US tax, feel free to reach out. But it's been a pleasure in teaching you guys over Zoom.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. At this point, Betty, you want to say a few words, please? Yeah, for the class you just had. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I don't mean to sound like a broken record like everyone else, but congratulations. It was a pleasure teaching you all and learned a lot from you guys as well, how to deliver a session remotely. So I hope you also picked up a few valuable things for next summer when you're studying for the CFE. All the best, and feel free to reach out if you ever need anything. I'm always around Mac or near KPMG in Hamilton, so don't hesitate to say hi.
Okay, thanks, Betty. Adam, you want to say a few words, please?
Hello.
Yeah.
To avoid repeating what everyone else is saying, I'm just going to say, don't forget to have a personality and to have fun in life. All right, guys? I know you guys are all doing accounting, but accounting is just one part of your overall life, okay? So hopefully in my class, you learned to have fun as well. You learned a lot too, but just don't forget that aspect. Work-life balance is really important. Yeah, and it's going to be tough because of the current year, what's happened, but things will get better. So it might take a little bit longer versus what was done historically, but just hang in there and things will be fine. Okay, so that's my overall what I would say. It was a real pleasure to have everyone. And I hope, again, you can reach out to me as well. You know me, I answer my emails like 10 minutes after you send it to me usually. But yeah, anytime. And I always like to tell my students, especially next year, is that, reach out to me. I will give you advice on one case in the next year when you're going to rate it. If you want me to mark something or do something like that, you have one case that I'll be able to do that for you. So you can shoot me an email and I can be able to give you advice on that. Okay, that's always my standing offer.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Thank you for those very nice words, encouraging words to the class. And at this point, Yvonne, you want to say a few words, please? Yeah.
Sure. I should be holding my dogs in front. I love dogs, so I should have mine in front of you. I just would like to give our DPA 602 class a big shout out, for the dedication and commitment over the past 3 months. It's been a long while. So thank you for your great case presentations. And I saw a great deal of professionalism emerging from the presenters. Like, even though, you may not be talking on a regular basis, when you come to present, you did a really good job. And I can just picture each one of you in a boardroom setting. So remember, make yourself heard all the time. I have learned a lot too. My ushering skill is much better now on Zoom. I will not lock you up in a breakout room. And I enjoy being a fly on the wall during the breakout sessions. All joking aside, as much as we emphasized technical and writing skills, play the role of a CPA in your everyday life and ask yourself, what would a CPA do in certain situations? And I believe that continuous developing these mindsets will lead you to success in the accounting profession, and you will join the club and become one of us. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you for those nice words. And once again, on my part as well, again, it was a pleasure to teach you guys, even though it was only for the first part of the term. I really enjoyed, as I often do in these classes, and it's a great class, and I'm sure some of you, I think we hope to see your names, as I said in passing at the start of the session, in the honor roll, or or in the profession later on, doing some great transactions, because that's really been the McMaster experience, right? You just heard as our keynote speaker, Susan Glass, so again, a fellow alumni from your standpoint, fellow McMaster graduate. And so again, there is a vast network, so please always be open and try to kind of, reach out to people, because that's really how professions work. The concept of professional networking is not some blaze cliche kind of an issue, but it's really, at some point, everybody thinks in a very altruistic way about trying to do things better for the economy, better the society, and everything starts at the individual level, people meeting people. But of course, understanding there are certain very well established bright lines and conflict of interest, integrity rules and so on and so forth. So with that, again, I just want to kind of congratulate all of you. Again, we started in May, we have with a virtual ceremony. So in a sense, at this point, you guys are, I would always emphasize the positives. You are probably the first virtual class. We don't know if this will be the only virtual class, but but let's see if the pandemic is all over, then a lot of things will be with nostalgia, right? Okay, oh, I was in a virtual class and so on. So there'll be a lot of things to talk about years to come and so on. And if this is going to be an ongoing thing, even if vaccine doesn't roll out, so this will be the first, this was the first virtual class. So very likely, maybe at least this academic year is going to be online. Maybe the next year might be as well. So in that sense, you guys are pioneers, and as often goes with pioneers, there are costs, but along with costs comes a lot of benefits as well, right? So kind of focus on the benefits. You guys are like pioneers, and as Susan mentioned, Canada is a great place, and one of the things about the Canadian folklore is being in the wilderness, adventurers and so on and so forth. So in a sense, you're an adventurers, as a bunch of adventurers in a plural sense in the virtual world. Right. So with that, I think I don't want to prolong the session. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And the only remark I want to make is please keep an eye on your email, because there will be a special gift for attending. There is something, a graduation kit that will be mailed to you folks. And lastly, on behalf of the university, I encourage you to keep in touch with DeGroote, as there will be some other events being hosted and so on and so forth. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and more importantly, enjoy the glorious day that's outside for those of you in the GTA at this point. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you.